So we'll call the meeting to order at 1:33. We'll start with the agenda, which is circulated. If somebody wants to move to adopt the agenda, unless there's any additions or deletions to the agenda.
No deletion. I can move to adopt them.
Shelley will.
And as presented.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Minutes from the last meeting. So we have two sets of minutes we have to go over. The first one was our regular Economic Development Committee meeting from February the 25th.
Can we ask everybody, because we are live recording, to use your microphones? Thank you.
So we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. February 25th, regular Economic Development Committee meeting. The minutes were circulated. If somebody wants to move to accept the minutes as presented, unless there's any changes.
I can move to accept those minutes.
So Carmen will move. All in favor? Motion's carried. Minutes from the March 18th Special Economic Development Committee meeting were also circulated. If somebody wants to move to accept those minutes as presented.
I can move to accept those minutes as presented.
So Noah moves. All in favor? That motion is carried. So we'll move on to unfinished business number 1, draft EDC bylaw and EDC terms of reference.
I can speak to that. So we've brought forward again the draft bylaw and updated terms of reference. Since the EDC last saw them on their February meeting agenda, we have also provided the drafts to council for feedback. That was presented to council on April 7th. They have asked some questions at that meeting and related to, the whether or not the committee operates under the same code of conduct and procedural bylaws council, the procedure for setting our annual economic development work plan. I did provide a response at the meeting there about that, and based on the draft bylaw, wanted to clarify for everybody that staff would present an updated work plan to the committee for feedback based on the strategic direction that's in council's strategic plan. So we would work on that if and when this bylaw is passed. They also asked questions around having an even number of members because the draft has six members. So basically the consideration related to that is that if it's tied vote, that means it's a defeated motion. So that's just the one thing to keep in mind. Also committee member term lengths, which are remaining 2 years based on the drafts and what is in the current terms of reference. And also the fact that we staggered the terms when we initially appointed folks, so that we would have hopefully staggered terms going forward as members finish out their term length. And then also what the procedure would be if the chair and the vice chair were both not at a meeting, which is governed by our procedural bylaw as well. In addition, to point out to the committee, since the February meeting, and very timely, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta has released a Rural Economic Development Toolkit. In that toolkit, they provided a draft of an Economic Development Committee bylaw. So we did attach that for your information and review as well. And that example bylaw could be used to refine the language of our bylaw as well going forward. So the hope is to get some feedback from the committee. Any recommendations? Once we have those, then we'll work on finalizing the bylaw and the terms of reference to bring that to council for hopefully for bylaw adoption and approval.
So at this point, there's nothing that we have to do. It's just information.
Well, ideally, it would be a recommendation from the committee. This is your opportunity to weigh in. So if there's any questions or feedback that you'd like to provide, that we would provide to council when we bring forward the bylaw to council, now is the moment to have that conversation.
Go ahead, Shelley.
On the introduction of the terms of reference, 1, 2, 3, 4 points down. Coordinate with Peace River District Chamber of Commerce and Mighty Peace Tourism Association to ensure the joint objectives are enhanced and duplication is avoided. Should we not have in there and other economic development committees from surrounding regions? Because I wouldn't want like Northern Sunrise County Economic Development and us to have the same initiative and then be and overlapping and causing some miscommunications and stuff like that, so I'd like that to be considered, if we could add something like that. And then I guess I wanna kind of clarify what the, I don't wanna say hierarchy, but like, how does it work here? So we got council here,
Mhm.
and they got their strategic plan. And then it's Economic Development Committee. And whatever, like advisory committee here who advises council. And then under that is staff and administration that helps to make those things happen. Am I correct there?
I'm not sure if it's such a strict hierarchy. The boards of the town provide staff with feedback and direction, which we take to council. Ultimately, the decision-making hierarchy, the hierarchy of staff is, I mean, the council's at the top. CAO is the employee of council, and then all of the staff are under our administrative hierarchy. So the boards aren't within that hierarchy, and I am looking across the table to make sure that Barb's agreeing with what I'm saying. But the committees provide feedback both to staff and to council for decision making.
We're not on the organizational chart, so yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm wondering is, if we want, and if we decide we think, I don't know, we came up with a plan to have I don't know, town parade, whatever, and we decided we thought it was a good idea. So then we take it to council, and council will say, yes, it's a good idea. I'm trying to figure out what's gonna get caught in between. Well, that's not gonna make it, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I was wanna make sure where all the communication outlets are so that we don't end up feeling like we're not contributing, or, what happened to that idea? I guess we shouldn't have came up with that, or, whatever. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to find an answer for, or a little bit of clarification on.
I'm at a loss for words because it's really hard unless we have a specific example. But the role of this committee is to provide advice through administration to council, advice and recommendations on economic development activities. So typically, if I see it's something that would fall under administration's role, that we would just go ahead and kind of approve, yay. If it's something right completely outside of our guardrails, then we would take this recommendation from this committee, like if something wanted to occur, and then we would take that back to council on behalf of this committee for a request for direction or decision from council. Does that help?
No, that makes sense.
We have like an example that's hard to say how it would be filtered.
Okay, I just don't want this committee to get lost in translation, or trying to come up with different initiatives if they're gonna stop here. Like, that's all I'm saying, is making sure that there's gonna be communication that we'll be able to move things forward. I guess that's more or less what I'm trying to say. I guess that's a long version of what I'm trying to say, sorry, but.
Mr. Chair, ideally, as it should go, the strategic plan should be built here, and then it goes to council for adoption or acceptance, and then anything that comes out of this committee anyway should be aligning with that strategic plan, and we would build our budget. Administration would build the budget ideally to support the strategic plan, so hopefully when we get on track, it will all roll as it should.
Any other comments or feedback or anything that anybody would like to speak to in regards to this?
I think the draft bylaw has a member or members of council appointed to the EDC as well.
Does your speaker work? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you for the reminder. My understanding is the bylaw has members of council also appointed to the EDC committee. And they also have the opportunity in their council report section to make sure that anything that needs, they want to bring forward is highlighted in the minutes that get submitted to them.
Thank you. Correct. Good point. Not sleep. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add or comment on? Doesn't look like it. Well, I guess we'll move on then. So we're moving on to number 2 now. So the proposed non-residential property tax incentive bylaw. Alicia, I'm assuming you're speaking to this as well.
Yes, I will, thank you. So as we have been mentioning about getting to more specifics now, we do have a draft of a proposed non-residential property tax incentive bylaw for the committee's feedback. Take it away, we are actively working on this. We have, we've got meetings scheduled over the next, a weekly meeting scheduled over the next number of months to make sure that we're doing the work at administration that we need to keep moving this forward. But right now we do have a draft. It's not one where we've done the work to build the business case to make sure that we're putting numbers forward that are for sure making sense for the town. So these are examples right now, but absolutely would like the committee to consider, talk to other people in the business community. What we've heard when we provided this bylaw to council is a desire to make sure that the bylaw is enough to move the needle for someone. So it's not just about providing a tax incentive for people who are already planning to do a thing, but hopefully one that will provide an incentive that's enough that someone who was not going to do something is going to do something in the future to build, to expand their business, to have a new business in a location in our community. We need to go through, review the different options that are available, solidify the details that are in the bylaw. We're also, while we do that, developing our draft process for receiving, processing, and incorporating the tax incentive into our annual property tax process. So obviously, if we're putting this out there, we want it to work. We don't want people to get caught in red tape that doesn't make sense as we move this forward. So as we're working on this, we want to make sure those processes are in place before council gives a green light to anything, so that we don't get trapped in a bad experience through the town, because those are hard to overcome. And we also internally are going to be looking at building a business case to make sure that the numbers that we put forward are are appropriate incentive rates, both to incentivize, but also to make sure that we're balancing that with the financial implications of the town's tax base. So that's something that we can do for the long term and it's sustainable. But the draft is here for your review and your recommendations, and we will definitely be bringing this back to the next Economic Development Committee meeting as well. Hopefully, perhaps an updated version. So. Sorry, so just a couple of the things that we would want perhaps the EDC to be weighing in on in terms of, you know, what is the appropriate levels, like how much, before we're going to give that tax incentive, what is the threshold that we would be looking at a business to be putting in before they're eligible? How many years? What's the rate in terms of percentage that makes sense? Obviously, we'll be playing with those numbers to see what makes sense on the town side, but from the business community side, what moves the needle on your end? I can turn it over for feedback.
I guess if anybody has any feedback, obviously we'll have to read through this more in depth. The highlighted areas in yellow, are these the areas of what you were just talking about?
Those are some of the big spots where we need to make sure that we get the right number into the bylaw for sure.
So I read through this ahead of time. I think it's fantastic that we're looking at doing this. I was having a hard time just off of the draft, kind of understanding what the current like example numbers would look like. Would you be able to take us through an example of kind of what's on page 33, just so it can make a little bit more sense? So you're saying 2.5% of the eligible capital costs as a maximum tax savings, and I think that makes sense, but on under 9A and B. Maximum 80% exemption. And further down, it's talking about over 4 years. How does that work? Is it supposed to be 80% of the increase in the tax cost? And is it structured where that savings declines year over year for 4 years? Or is it just a straight 80%? And then year 4, 5, when it expires, we're back to full tax. Can you kind of work through maybe an example for us? Just so I can understand it a bit better.
I'm not sure if I can truly do that right now. That's some of the work that we need to do. That's why we have that weekly meeting scheduled, so that we can get corporate services to weigh in with that those specific examples. For ourselves, I think in general, the bylaw, the intention is, or the way it's typically drafted is that it'll be, the tax exemption will be a certain percentage in year 1, and then it'll slowly decrease over time, so that once you're done, you are at that full, the full typical municipal tax rate. Sorry, go ahead, Benji.
Yeah, so it would like, year 1 might be a percentage, year 2 would be a percentage, year 3 percentage, 4, and then would be well, indexing up till you get to your full assessed value.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, but the assessed value, would that be based off like after 5 years, or is that calculation done at year 1? Do you know what I mean? Because every year, so if I finish my renovation and my property value increased, say $1 million as an example, and my taxes go up accordingly, would that be from year 1, or would that be at the assessed value at year 5?
Typically, it's at year 1, and we would create an agreement that said, this is the amount over the next 4 or 5 years, whatever that term is that we decide. It's not, like, we've got an example in here. It's just like, the way it's written right now is 80% across the board for the first couple of years. I certainly think that it makes sense to taper it. That's the way most of them are usually done. So you can kind of adjust your earnings, you can grow your business, and you actually have the ability to make that payment instead of, well, crap, here's another $100,000 expense next year, right?
Yeah.
The intent is that we would review it probably before you're done the construction, or shortly thereafter. Once we know like what the impact to your assessment would be, we'd work with our assessor. We'd get the valuation for that increase in assessment, and then we would set out terms for the next couple of years, is how I envision it. This is some of the process stuff that we've got, but that's the way I worked it in a previous community, is it was, here's your first year assessment change, and it's a change, right? That we do this calculation based on, and then we do an agreement.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you for that initial draft. Everybody can read through it further and we can discuss this going forward. So we'll move on to unfinished business number 3, which is the job fair. Who gets to speak to that?
So this is just a way of information for now. In our last meeting, we had mentioned that this is something we definitely want to get done. And it is a town intention to ensure that it is done, and the chamber has graciously, I'll say, accepted the task of hosting it this year with the event organizer. And for now, we'll just table the updates, I would say, for June meeting, because there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen before we provide more details to the EDC as to our next steps, because we did have a grant in place that we will need to discuss at administrative level as to how we proceed with that and how much support we can provide as well.
Thank you.
So is it still happening?
Yeah, it's still happening.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so the chamber will be taking that on and doing that. What it looks like is the additional discussion points that maybe comes up at our next meeting. So I guess we'll move on to new business then, so, sorry, I don't know what VGP stands for.
Business Grant Program.
There you go. Fair enough. Okay, so I guess we're gonna have a discussion about a meeting date for the Business Grant Program special meeting.
Yeah, the Business Grant Program intake period 2 closes at the end of the month. So we do anticipate receiving applications. I think we may have received one today. We've spoken to a good number of others, so we expect more than that to be coming in before the deadline. So we do need to have a date in the calendar to review those applications. One thing I do want to highlight for the committee is that there's a good chance we'll receive more applications than we have funds for. We may bring forward to council an opportunity to allocate money from last year that was unexpended in this budget line. And we'll see if we might be able to increase the pot a little bit this year, but that's something that will happen in May. So, and that is also subject to the applications that we've received. There's no point doing it if it turns out that we're incorrect in terms of the quantity that we've received. But regardless, we do need a date so that we're prepared. So I'll look to the committee for a possible meeting date. Possibly May 20th.
That works for me.
Works for me.
Works.
May 20th?
Yeah, it would.
Oh, it would be right after the long weekend.
It would be the day after though, right? Like
It
the
would.
Tuesday or.
Yeah, for Tuesday, yeah.
That'll be good. Yeah.
That works for everyone?
And when do we usually have it at? 2 o'clock? 3:30. When do we have this meeting?
It has kind of moved around.
It has moved around.
It's either
Yeah.
sometime in the afternoon,
Fair
either 1:30 or 3:30. Personally, I'm okay either way.
I am too.
1:30, 2 o'clock?
1:30, just keep it at the EDC
Yeah.
typical time.
Okay.
Would we be getting those out in advance then to take a look at them before the meeting?
Yes, we can do that. I will note that we don't typically put the actual application on the agenda because it's full of business sensitive information. But we could provide those, or members could come in to review the applications. That might be easiest. But we will issue the agenda with the summary for sure before the meeting.
Okay, so if we're done with that, then we'll move on to number 2, which is the NRED 3 grant decision and next steps.
So at the last meeting, we highlighted that the NRED grant application had been submitted. We were waiting on a decision. So we are happy to announce that we did receive grant funding from the province for this year's version of NRED. So we are moving forward with the retail gap analysis and the tourism destination assessment. We had previously talked a little bit more about the tourism destination assessment, but now the retail gap analysis is for sure a go as well. And that was a part of the CAO mandate letter that council put out for April 2024 to October 2025. So one of the reasons why it's absolutely on our to-do list. So we have attached a draft scope. So the next steps for this project, now that we've received the grant funding, is to put out a request for proposals publicly, so that we can get submissions from consulting firms who have the experience and expertise to carry out this project. So when we do that, we include a project scope. So we've got a draft version of the project scope that Corinne's been working on, that we would happily take feedback on from the EDC, so that when we put it out, we've got the things that are important to the town captured properly. So that project scope, includes a whole series of project objectives related to the retail gap analysis, and then goes into some of those in a little bit more detail around the market analysis and consumer demand, gap identification, and then what recommendations we'd be expecting. to come out of the project and the deliverables from the consultant. So the hope is to put the request for proposal out in May, probably give consultants about a month. So then we'd be receiving proposals and evaluating those probably in June this year, and then awarding that project. And then it would happen over the next number of months.
So does anybody have any questions or feedback or anything from that information? No, okay. We'll move on. So we'll move on to reports. First one is ongoing project updates. Anybody has anything in regards to that they'd like to speak to? No? Okay. Downtown revitalization.
I have a couple of. I have a couple of items, but it's not necessarily revitalization, but we did have a request. Lisa Armstrong from Rotaract reached out. And she wanted to know if any of the EDC would be available to assist on June 21st with their River Days. And they're just looking for help from 8 to 12 8 AM to 12 PM on those times to help with parking at Man's Landing. I think that's, last year they had a bit more of some of the markets and places set up there, but they're just wondering if any committee members might be able to contribute some volunteer time. So let me know, and then I can get back to Lisa on that. And then I don't know whether if Lane, if you want to speak to what Holly from Muscle Mechanics had reached out about that little doctor incentive. But right,
I'm just trying to refresh my memories.
all right, can speak, or if you.
Yeah, if you want to speak to it at first, yeah.
So basically Holly had sent our little group an email, and it was the Second Street org. And what it is some of the businesses in those communities, in order to attract doctors to the area, it might be that, you know what, I'll give you a gym membership. Muscle Mechanics would give them massages. Maybe Benji's gonna give them a Peace Valley Inn's gift card. So just basically gift certificates, etc., from local businesses trying to attract doctors to communities. And that had gone over well. So she wondered if maybe that's something that, say, the businesses, the chambers, the EDC might gauge interest from the business community, and then we could present that, if that goes to, say, the healthcare, attraction board, something. And I know myself, around that same time, I saw something on the news about Williams Lake, BC. So what they did is they would fill the doctor's fridge, they'd find them daycare, they'd really help them get set up at home and in the community. And I believe they said over about a 2 or 3 year period, they had attracted 11 doctors to Williams Lake, BC. So Holly brought that forward, and if that's something, I mean, I know myself as a business, I'm like, I would definitely get behind that and try to attract some doctors.
So would that be like a welcome package kind of thing, or more of a recruitment package or retention? But
I think it's a bit more of a recruitment package is how they put it out there, because I know even Holly had put on her page, she's like, I donate $3,600 on massages, and I'm like, well, we could divide that by 4 for 4 doctors, right? But it is more of a recruitment. And then even if you said, you know what, maybe you sign like a 5-year contract. And I know I was mentioning this to Andy, and a lifetime ago when he was president of the chamber, maybe that's 20 years, I don't know. But he said, looking at doctor recruitment back then, they would take some of the locums out for lunch. And it was like, yeah, it's expensive to move up here. Like, we've got student loans, we're just getting started. And I believe that's when Lauren Mann was mayor, and he was like, geez, even if we could have a little pot that maybe you get $5,000 to help you move up or something as well, so I don't know if that's something the town might entertain, and then the businesses, but as trying to attract them.
I actually remember when Lauren threw that one dinner at, remember that? And it was quite a large dinner, and there was all the doctors that they were recruiting, and some that were already here, and they were kind of mentoring those and being their like little pal thing, buddy system. And we did a good job back then of recruiting and really welcoming them into the community. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So if that's something where, however we ponder, look at it, but Holly mentioned it, and I think it's worth looking at.
So Holly did talk to us at the chamber as well, and we did say that the chamber would certainly be, willing to do what we can to support it. I recommended that she spoke to the doctor recruitment committee. Because of course, that would be the committee that is in charge of attraction of new doctors. I don't know what it looks like. I think it's a good idea. It has to be flushed out. I just suggested that would be her first start, because otherwise we're doing something. Like, I know that in the past, sitting on that committee, there has been an approach of we don't want to be incentivizing doctors necessarily because it's a slippery slope of where does it start and where does it stop. But obviously, if there's different ways of doing that, so anyway, that was my suggestion to Holly, was that she reached out to them, had a conversation with them. The chamber certainly would do their part to help to support this. If it was just rallying the business community to get behind it and whatever we can put together, we're certainly on board with that, so, yeah.
What else? That. No, and then the only thing, I just have to give like a little 2-minute feel-good story, because I know Lane's on a thing, but, I was doing my annual cleanup behind Andy's little office of the spring on Friday, and I'll say I was rather disappointed when I looked on Thursday behind the building, because there was a bunch of clothing dragged there, containers that had obviously been taken out of dumpsters, plastic dumbbells, like stuff that was obviously not our crap behind the building. So anyway, I wasn't impressed. Went there Friday morning to clean everything up, and a couple of gents that live on the streets or elsewhere, they don't live at the shelter, and they came up and they're like, hey, would you like a hand to clean this up? And I said, yeah, I'd appreciate it. I didn't make the mess, neither did you. So they came, and one guy took the rake, and the other guy, we were picking up all the crap, etc., and had a very good conversation with them about, I don't know where they stay, but a couple lost their place with COVID. A third guy came along after him, and his wife had been displaced after the fires, so they don't have a place to live right now, but just a very good conversation. They also said they feel this frustration of corrections dropping people on the streets, because 2 of them are lifetime in the community, and they're like, we get judged, we get tarred with the same brush, how we get treated and such. So just like I said, I absolutely appreciated their help. They said, at any time, they're like, you need garbage picked up, odd jobs, let us know, because they said, we actually care about the community, we will pick up garbage, we will take care of things. They discussed the theft, etc. as well. And then they did say, one fellow gave me his cell phone number, because he said, if there are ever conversations where he's like, if one of us could be a voice at the table, because it doesn't really sound like, I think during the day, they can't go use the restrooms at the shelter. And I thought they were able to do that at the new Sagatawa building, but it doesn't sound like they were able to do that. So he's like, where are we supposed to go? Like, we can't go anywhere. We can't use the bathrooms. We can't this and this. So, you put yourself, like we said, it's not everyone doing the crime. It's not everyone causing the problems, but I'm like, yeah, that's really awful. Like, I would have assumed they could go to those 2 places and use the facilities, etc., etc. So again, if there's things, I think it would be good to have a voice at the table. And like I said, if something comes up, I have the one gentleman's phone number, but at the end, I'm like, thank you so much. That was just really kind of them, and nice to have a good story coming out instead of the other one. So yeah, my last 2 cents.
You want to turn off your, thanks. Good, okay, if there's nothing else under downtown revitalization, we'll move on to entrepreneurship opportunities. Somebody else on it? Okay. There's nothing under that, entrepreneurship opportunities, and we'll move on to tourism.
I just have one thing. There was a local guy that puts on like concert series in Grand Prairie. So I got his number and I connected them with the town, and hopefully that turns into something for the town of Peace River. So they bring lots of bands from all over the place into Grand Prairie now, but he's a Peace River resident. So I said, well, yeah, we like music.
Does anybody else have anything under tourism that they want to speak to? Not, we'll move on to changing the narrative.
Sorry, Lane, this is maybe a little random, but I just want to acknowledge that we've been operating with a 2015 tourism map for a really long time, and we're about to release a new, modern, correct up-to-date version, so. Small step, but an important step for when we've got people from outside the community. We are updating our map so that it actually reflects what's in our community today.
The other question I had actually was signage. I know a few meetings ago, they were getting signs made or digging them out of storage. Or something along those lines. Is there gonna be adequate signage for our tourism spot?
I think you're referring to the wayfinding project. So we brought an initial information item to you guys in February, I believe. So that project's still ongoing. We're at the wayfinding plan stage right now. So we have, I think we, at that, on the February agenda, you saw a list that had a lot of the items that are being identified as the key ones that would be on the town signage. The consultant is working with that and they're developing some options, like actual sign design options for us. So that is happening right now. We don't have an update, like a really substantive update today. Hopefully we will in a meeting or two, but probably a meeting. Once the wayfinding plan is done, then we'll be going out to do, to ask for the actual constructed signs. The proposal for that. So I think probably not quite as quickly as you're hoping for, but we're absolutely on the road to having vastly improved wayfinding in town. Yeah, but I don't think it's gonna be for this summer, but by next summer, I think we'll be looking at some new signs. Yeah.
I should mention on the tourism part, last week at Northern Sunrise County Active, Mighty Peace Tourism came and presented to them, and they've done some really good promo videos for the Peace Country and stuff. So they're running those now and trying to work a little bit more closely with Travel Alberta to identify some different opportunities that exist in the area, which we've spoken to in the past, that this part of the world is forgotten in Travel Alberta's mandate. So unfortunately, you know, we don't have the attention that we're looking for, but if you haven't gone to Mighty Peace Tourism site, they do have a really nice promo video that they've got there, so trying to do their part too, so.
And sorry, I'll just jump in again. One of the things that we've talked about for those wayfinding signs is a spot for things like QR codes and such, where we can link people when they're in a specific location. They can scan something and that'll take them to things like the Mighty Peace Tourism website where they've got all that good information. Yeah.
Okay, so it didn't seem like there was anything under change the narrative either when I brought it up, unless somebody's got something that they want to mention there. Then business information process and programs. This meeting's just clipping right along. We'll be out of here in no time. I did. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on from reports to information. So the first item is enabling housing project update.
Yeah, so this is a project that the town has started with the Rural Development Network. You'll see there are a number of communities in our area that are participating. So right now, the Enabling Housing Choice North project is the R&D's project, and we are participating. It is a continuation of a project that they did initially in Southern Alberta to help identify the housing issues and potential solutions in rural areas of the province. In Southern Alberta first, now we're up. So we did start this project in January, or we confirmed that we were participating in January. The project kickoff was in March. And we do now have a public survey that's out. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, come across Facebook feeds, but it's definitely being promoted right now. It was, I believe, in our utility insert that went out in April. So if you do read those, then you see it there. And we'll also be advertising it at the trade show this coming weekend, and will be open until early May. And so far we received about 75 responses from the community. So definitely spread the word, especially to local builders, because there are some questions that are intended specifically for some of our development community to get that kind of perspective on a few things, but also the community at large. So, and we have attached the community engagement strategy, that is kind of the working plan or document between the town and the Rural Development Network for everyone's information. And if there are one of the other items or things to do in the engagement strategy is also doing some local interviews. So if there are local individuals or organizations that are particularly, you think we should really talk to them, and by we, I mean the Rural Development Network staff, they'll be the ones who will be spearheading those. Please flag those for us and we can add them to the list, because we are developing a list for them.
So are there any questions or comments on that part of the agenda? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the EDA conference. What, last week? You guys gone last week? Is that when it was?
The week before.
Week before. Fair enough. Okay, who gets to speak to this?
Yes, it's me, but I wasn't the only person who went to the conference, so anybody else feel free to jump in. So yeah, we were there. There was over 400 delegates in Beale-Kaministas. First time got to go there. So we did go to lots of different sessions and had some good, or learned some good information, particularly opportunities to partner with the Real Estate Foundation for projects related to housing. Green took the opportunity to make contact with a lot of other EDOs from other towns and cities. We also definitely heard some feedback or some information from Travel Alberta. Was re-emphasized or re-noticed that there's a big gaping hole where Peace River and some of our surrounding communities are when it comes to Travel Alberta's attention. But I think it was another opportunity for us to maybe mention that that wasn't the most appropriate thing. We also, the first day was a series of updates from industry leaders from a variety of sectors in the province, including energy, information technology, ag, film, aviation, and health sectors. It really did reinvigorate, I think, for a couple of us, the need to go back to the strategic item on our work plan related to film and getting those locations onto the right website so that we might be a part of that kind of conversation. There's also some good programs related to business retention, specifically Community Futures. Not every Community Futures in the province, but Community Futures has a Smart Start program that is available if the community opts into participating, and it's something where you're working not necessarily with your local Community Futures office, but with a more central office in Alberta. So that's something that we might want to look into. They do intakes though, so it's not, you can't just put up your hand and say yes. They also have to accept working with you. And they're looking at intakes in the fall and spring. So it's not an immediate thing, but it's something that we might want to look at putting on our work plan. And then Flagstaff County's featured business program, where they're actually doing a series of videos and also creating content accumulating content that they can use for a variety of strategic purposes when they're promoting their business community. So that was definitely an interesting program we might want to look at in the near future. And then it also came across the value of the data and how it's important for the town and our region to have data that's specific and local to our area, so that when we're building cases and talking specifically to businesses and industry leaders, that we have data that supports our case and that we can use to build on it. So happy to go, and definitely learned a lot, and then made really long drives back. But it was a good conference. And I think that they are releasing the agenda with videos from many of the sessions. So when we do receive that link, if we can share that with EDC members, if you want to take a look at some of those, we'll circulate that. Oh, right.
Shelley, you have a question?
Yes. So I think that administration plans to become a full member of the EDA. So if you're a member of the EDA, would we get a special rate on advertising in their magazine, their experience? You know what magazine I'm talking about?
Their Invest.
Invest.
I
Magazine.
don't know if we're not sure, yeah.
I see Northern Sanders County has a presence in there, as well as many of our neighbors. And I personally would like to see us at some point be in there as well.
I think that the town and administration are taking the right steps just by attending these conferences. Like Alicia says, sometimes it's nothing more than just establishing the contact with an individual. Again, reinvigorating your mindset about something that is there, but it's been forgotten because there's a trillion other projects that you're working on and stuff like that. So I think it was good that, you know, the individuals were able to go and experience it and again, make connections. So, again, obviously, I think that the on the radar of promoting, again, hence the reason of going to that conference in the first place is promoting, again, getting in front of Invest Alberta, getting in front of Tourism Alberta or Travel Alberta, just to make sure that we're advocating for our part of the province, because if we're not there, nobody's doing it for us, right? So, yeah. Were there any other questions or comments about the EDA conference? Okay, so we'll move on to development report, February and March 2025 development report.
So these are both the reports that were provided to council at their February and March meetings. So highlighting some of the major developments that have been happening or coming across the development desk. I guess the biggest news that probably everybody's aware of, at least peripherally, is the West Hill. So that development permit has been issued. And they are starting to do site work. We're still working in the background, signing agreements and looking at updated versions of engineering and landscaping drawings and all of those things, but it is started and that's very exciting. We have also approved 2 new single detached homes, and one in the West Peace and one in the downtown. So looking forward to receiving building permit applications for both of those, but the development permits have been issued for them. And then there was a change to the land use bylaw that facilitated a retail store application in what was industrial, but it's now part of the commercial district. So we did a redistricting just up on the West Hill, right at the edge of where the rail line was, the dividing line between the commercial and the industrial lands. A couple of parcels that are south of the rail line have been redistricted to facilitate more commercial development. So that opens up some commercial spaces on the West Hill that did not exist previously. So those are some of the big highlights. We allude to it, and I'll allude to it vaguely again. We have received some interesting inquiries for some vacant lots in the downtown. It's too early to say anything more, but they're encouraging. And if we can continue to encourage them, then we absolutely will. Also, I do want to highlight KTC Child and Family Services. They have a approved development permit to make use of the office that was the old Valley Printers in downtown. They are proposing to do some significant renovations, so there's definitely a building permit and some renovations that have to happen before that building would be occupied. But step 1 is complete, so that could be really good news for occupying a vacant building.
And who is that, KTC?
I had
Asking out.
Yeah, it's an Aboriginal agency associated with the Woodland Cree. I hesitate to try and pronounce the name. I don't think I know it well enough. But they do operate and provide services in our community, so they're looking to have a physical presence within the downtown. Those are the big ones, I think.
Yeah, of course, the one on the hill is the big one. Everybody's watching all the earth movement and all the stuff that's going on there, so that's exciting. Any questions, comments on any of the development report? No, okay, if not, we'll move on to the labor market partnership with Government of Alberta.
So once again, by way of information, we met with Deanna from Government of Alberta in, so I guess March. The time is flying by, seriously, by honest. But yeah, we met with her, and from our discussions, we have the opportunity to access funding to conduct a labor market gap analysis through partnership with the Government of Alberta. So it's something we're going to explore to see what opportunities exist there. And also we are receiving employment and occupational statistics. The source is stated there. And also it's something that we can get on a regular basis. So I do intend to send you guys as we get it, because it will help with the decision making and understanding what's happening in the town of Peace River from the analytics side of things. So when you're making a decision, it's not just completely subjective, but sorry, not completely objective, but subjective in nature as well. And also we spoke about conducting a business walk in the downtown core and also on the West Hill as well. So the idea is ensuring that business owners are aware of what's happening, not just at the municipal level, but also at the provincial level as well. And access to whatever programs we have, because from what we have heard and garnered is that a lot of businesses don't even know about our business grant, for instance. So being able to provide that information one-on-one would be good. And two, there's also provincial stuff that they can access. So maybe we can't assist from our level, but there is that opportunity. So we want to make sure that they are aware.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on the labor market partnership piece of things? No? Okay, so we'll move on to number 5, business welcome letters, which are attached in the agenda package. Don't know if there's really a briefing note on that one, so I don't know who's going to speak to that. They're pretty self-explanatory. They're just the welcoming letters to the new businesses that got a business license, so I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions about those letters. Yes, something.
They're just provided for information.
Information, yeah, that's what I assumed they were, so, yep, fair enough. Okay, well, so then we'll move on to key communication items, if there are any key communication items that need to be.
I think the tax incentive would certainly be one
You want to elaborate, sorry?
for our key communication items. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think one would be the incentive for the tax things, that's a.
Sorry. Is the key communication item in what regard, sorry?
Well, I don't, that's what we do when we do ours and when we do it on council, what do you think stands out in your,
Oh, I see.
that's the key communication
Fair,
items. to take
fair,
forward.
okay, fair enough, sorry.
Yeah, so
I don't
just the
like
tax
council meeting
incentive.
very often, so I
Yeah.
wasn't really quite sure what that was. Anyway, fair enough,
Okay, well, that's mine. I would say that was a pretty important item that we discussed today.
fair enough, okay.
Actually, I just have one quick question, because when we did this tax incentive program, there was also a bylaw to do with derelict buildings. At they were kind of proposed at the same time, and I'm just curious how that bylaw is coming.
That bylaw is in the works. Yeah, it's just order of operation.
Okay, well, it doesn't really seem like anybody's jumping up and down for any other key communication items, so. If there's nothing else that we need to discuss at the meeting, then we can probably adjourn it. At 2:27 PM. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks for the quick meeting. Nope.